for about what you'd pay for a cup of coffee, you can buy a ticket to well, a completely different life. It's such a powerful idea, right? The dream of a jackpot that just solves everything. But what's the real cost of that dream? I'm not just talking about the $2 for the ticket, I mean the price of the entire system.
It really sounds like a simple question, but the answer, well, it's surprisingly complex. To get to it, we've got to look way beyond the ticket itself and check out the massive, state-sponsored industry it represents. So let's start with a big number. Here it is. This is the first piece of the puzzle. In 2023 alone, Americans spent nearly $109 billion on lottery tickets. Now, to put that into perspective, that's more than the entire GDP of a country like Iceland. It is a truly staggering amount of money, all chasing that lightning in a bottle moment.
So, in this explainer, we're going to dig in. We'll ask, why do we play against such impossible odds? When we buy a ticket, where does our money actually go? Mathematically, what is that piece of paper really worth? What happens if you actually win? And finally, is this whole thing truly fair?
And that brings us to this core puzzle I like to call the lottery paradox. We collectively spend billions on a game with odds that are so long, they're kind of hard for our brains to even wrap our heads around. For a Powerball jackpot, your odds are about 1 in 292 million. You are literally hundreds of times more likely to be struck by lightning. So why on earth do we do it? Well, the numbers behind our spending habits are just staggering. The average American who plays Elect spends about $320 a year. But then you look at the extremes. In Massachusetts, the average resident spends a jaw-dropping $915 every year. This really makes you stop and ask a critical question. Is this just some harmless fun, or is it something more? To really get what's going on, we have to follow the money. Most of us probably assume that when we hand over $2, it goes straight into that giant jackpot. But the reality is a lot more complicated. Let's trace the journey of a single dollar.
Okay, picture this. Think of the lottery like a mystery vending machine. You put your dollar in, you're hoping for an amazing prize. But here's the catch. Before you even get a chance to win, the owner of the machine takes a huge cut for themselves and for, quote, public good. What's actually left over for the prizes is just a fraction of what you put in. So here's that breakdown. For every single dollar you spend, only about 50 to 60 cents actually makes it into the prize pool. The rest, almost half, is immediately skimmed right off the top. About 30 cents goes to the state to help with public funding, and another 10 cents covers all the administrative costs and retailer commissions. From the very start, you're playing with less than half your money.
And to put this into perspective, let's compare that payout rate. A typical slot machine in a casino, it's usually designed to pay out around 90 cents for every dollar you put in. The lottery returns about 50 cents. If you look at it just as a financial product, the lottery offers one of the worst returns you can possibly imagine. Okay, so we know the payout is really low, but with jackpots getting so huge, can a ticket ever be a good bet? Believe it or not, there's actually a way to calculate this. It's a concept from statistics called expected value, and it lets us turn all our hopes and dreams into a single, cold, hard number.
It sounds really complicated, I know, but the idea is pretty simple. You take every possible prize, from winning a few bucks all the way up to that giant jackpot. You multiply each of those prize amounts by its specific odds of being won. Then you just add all those tiny little numbers up. The final sum is the expected value. It's the average amount you can expect to get back for every ticket you buy.
Let's walk through this with a real example for a $2 ticket. As you can see, almost 96% of the time, the outcome is zero. The smaller prizes, when you factor in their odds, they contribute about 15 cents to the ticket's total value. And even that massive jackpot, because the probability is so tiny, only adds about 23 cents. So when you sum it all up, the total expected value of your $2 ticket is a measly 38 cents. This means, on average, every single time you play, you are effectively losing $1.62. It's a game that is mathematically designed for you to lose.
But what if you beat those odds? What if you are that 1 in 292 million? Surely that's when the dream comes true, right? Well, for many, that's where the real trouble begins. And the very first challenge? Just deciding how to take the money. Winners face a huge choice. Take a reduced pre-tax lump sum right now, or get the full jackpot amount paid out in installments over 30 years.
The annuity, that provides long-term managed security. But the temptation of all that cash right now is just incredibly strong. And data shows that for nearly a decade, almost every single major jackpot winner has chosen the lump sum.
And this is where the dream can curdle into a nightmare, something people often call the lottery curse. The stories are just tragic. William Post won $16 million. His own brother hired a hitman to get the money, and Post later died in debt. But these aren't just one-off stories. Research shows that winners save very little, and they often report being no happier and getting less joy from everyday things than they were before they won. This leads us to the most difficult question of all. When we step back and look at who is actually funding this multi-billion-dollar system, it raises some really serious questions about the true social impact of the lottery itself. You'll often hear the lottery described as a tax on the poor. It's a provocative statement, for sure, but it points to a fundamental and pretty uncomfortable issue with how this whole system works. It's what economists call a regressive tax.
So here's what that means in simple terms. If someone earning, say, $100,000 a year spends $300 on tickets, it's a tiny fraction of their income. But if someone earning just $30,000 a year spends that same $300, it represents a full 1% of their entire annual income. The burden of funding the system falls disproportionately on those who can least afford the mathematically guaranteed loss. So, we've gone on this journey from the simple dream of winning all the way to the harsh mathematical reality. We've seen that a lottery ticket has a negative value by its very design, and that even winning can bring a devastating curse. And we've uncovered a system that's largely funded by those with the least to spare. The lottery sells a powerful and really alluring product: possibility, the dream of a new life. But what the data shows is that this dream is paid for, overwhelmingly, by those who are the most desperate for it. And so, the final question we're left with isn't really about odds or jackpots. It's about fairness. Is this a fair price to pay for hope?